Hello, my name is Douglas, and today I will be reviewing Joe Dever's book called Flight from the Dark. I will be covering a synopsis of the book without spoilers, my thoughts on the book, and what makes Joe Dever's books different than my example, which will be The Walking Dead, a Telltale game series. It's a video game. I will also be explaining what type of audiences the novel might attract and why. So let's get started. So this book is based off of during a medieval time, I would say, when when there is a conflict in a kingdom you are in, and you are a warrior. You're pretty much a soldier, but you're a very high ranked soldier. You're a very respected soldier. You're called a Kai, and there's this threat called the Dark Lords. They're an old enemy that is starting to arise, and you have to go to the king and alert him of this danger. And you have to go through many obstacles to be able to reach the king in a timely manner. And originally, it starts with you choosing. Before any of this, it originally starts with you choosing your disciplines, Kai disciplines, which are pretty much powers. Um, you're also gonna choose what you have in your backpack. Uh, like what type of weapons you eventually get prompted with that, and you also have the ability to randomly select combat skill and endurance points, which is a which is determined by what is provided here called a random number chart, and you are supposed to close your eyes and select. You're supposed to close your eyes and select a random number, and that determines your endurance and combat skill. Very unique type of system, and you pretty much go throughout the whole book choosing different paths, making certain decisions. See if you're making the type of decisions such as if you want to fight somebody, or if you don't want to fight them, you want to avoid them, or if you want to confront somebody, such as somebody's coming in a wagon toward you. Do you want to confront them and ask for a ride, or just dodge them? You don't want extra trouble, for example. That's the type of decision you have to make. It's not really a type of book where you just traditionally read the book and that's it. You actually guide yourself through your own path in the book, and your decisions influence the ending of the book. So that is my synopsis on the book. I cannot tell you any more as I will be spoiling uh, the fun on actually reading the book. So now my thoughts on the book. I have never read a book like this in my life. This is a very interesting book because it reminds me of, I would say, Game of Thrones type of style, because it's medieval. It's a medieval type of style book, and it takes place in a kingdom, and there's this um, threat that's coming toward you, and it you actually can coordinate your actions, which is very cool. I've never seen anything like this. And you can also keep a combat record of what you do. I mean, it's very unique. I mean, compared to another book where you actually just read the book and that's it. It's very dull, but and you're always, let's say, questioning on the other book you're reading, like, oh, why did the character do that? I would have changed this, and that. Well, in this book, you can make those decisions. You can actually change things. And personally, I was happy with the decisions I made. I'm not going to spoil my ending because I don't want to influence you. You have to actually read the book and influence your own path. I will not influence it for you. And I chose my decisions ultimately led me to my path, and there was nothing really pushing me toward one designated path made. It was me making the path entirely, which is very interesting. And having the ability to use certain powers, and it's almost like a video game. It's very, very unique. And I've never read a book like this, and I'm actually very glad I read this book. I was very skeptical first at reading the book, but I am very glad I read the book, and I I would actually play. I would actually play. It reminds me of a game, and I would actually read this book one more time, and possibly choose another path. And just it's just one of the most unique books I've ever read, and I am very intrigued by what I've read. I had no idea I would read a book like this, and many viewers will be intrigued by this the type of layout of this book. So now I will be talking about why Joe Dever's books differ from my example. For my example, which would be The Walking Dead, for like the Walking Dead video game. It's a Telltale game where you pretty much direct your decision making, and you pretty much, there's different endings based on your decisions. So Joe Dever's book, his books differ from the Walking Dead game because there's more variety when it comes to making a decision. You can actually use what you have and influence a decision, make a more efficient decision, go in a more specific direction compared to The Walking Dead, where those paths are more paved for you, and you're stuck with, I would say, more like 4 options, sometimes even 2 options, compared to Joe Dever's books, where you're actually stuck with multiple options, and you actually can use your weapons, and you can use your combat skill to actually advance forward. Instead, The Walking Dead, you can't actually do that. It's just almost like your character just has that you're never a power defined in your character in The Walking Dead, but here you define the power of your character, and that is what is very different compared to The Walking Dead, as Joe Dever's books are very interesting in that aspect. And also, I would say you also have the ability to really survive. It's more of a survival environment when you're reading this book, because you actually have to pick food. Like, you have to eat food, or if you don't eat food, you lose endurance and eventually you die. While The Walking Dead, they try to keep you alive, and you can, for hours at a time, walk around and you're not going to die. It's almost like, okay, he maybe eats offset, or maybe between transitions in the game, but this, you have to eat or else you will die, and that's it. That's the end. So this is a very unique setup, and eventually you will die if you don't eat, because you'll start losing endurance points, and no endurance points means you're dead, and you actually have to use combat skill to actually combat enemies or targets that are approaching you if you want to. And there's actually more, I would say, there's more aspects I incorporate into this game, so you have, more control compared to a game that's already not really giving you any control, honestly. And this Joe Dever's novel really does give you control over what happens with the character. And instead of making the reader feel hopeless, the reader can then feel more reassured, because they can actually control the fate of their character. And even though they might not be satisfied, or not satisfied enough, or any other reason, the point is that they made those decisions, and they ultimately led their character to that path. And they can't blame the author. They can only blame themselves if they didn't like something. So it's not the author that's really going to receive criticism if they don't like something. It's more if the reader doesn't like something, because it's more of the actual reader. They're actually guiding, and that's what really makes Joe Dever's novel unique. I've never seen anything like it. And you can keep a log of what you do in the novel, which I've never seen before, like a combat record. That's what you can keep. And it's very random, and it's very fair, and it's one of the most interesting novels I've ever read, and I highly recommend that you read this novel as it's a one of a kind, and you will not find a novel out there like this. And now I'm going to explain what type of audiences the novel might attract and why. This novel will most likely attract audiences that do not like to read, and audiences that like a medieval type of genre style to their books. Now, this will attract audiences that do not like to read because there's not a lot of reading really involved in this book, and I personally do not like reading because the books that I read usually that are assigned to me get very long, and it really discourages me from reading other books because I just assume that books will be very long. But this book is not long, and it actually encourages me to read because I want to see the consequence of my actions. And this book will intrigue people who do not like to read because they'll see the consequences of the actions they just made before, and it will also immerse the reader because they're actually interacting with the novel. And that is one main factor that will attract people who do not like to read to this book because they can actually interact, and to a certain extent it's considered a game in their mind because they're interacting so much with the book, yet they're actually still reading a novel. This will also attract people who like medieval type of styles to their books because it it reminds me personally of Game of Thrones, and that is due because of its medieval style in terms of a kingdom and these different types of places and the different types of little cities within the kingdom. There's a king, and there's all these different types of soldiers, all these different type of mystical powers, and it is a very, I would say a very medieval type of genre that people who um, look for these type of genres would enjoy because it incorporates all of that. It really intrigues the reader because they don't know what's really going to happen, and it's there's always something that might pop up, but they don't know that it might pop up because it's something new. It's a medieval style. That's what makes it so unique because it's all it's always something unknown, something in the abyss, and that's why people who like medieval genres might get attracted to it because its mysteriousness, the different types of powers and evils that might lurk in that genre, and that's personally why I would like it because there's different types of powers, and there's a lot of problems, but not common problems that we would find in just regular society. This would be in some other type of society, only a medieval society, because it incorporates powers. It incorporates these different types of enemies, not just any other enemy, flying enemies that can whisk you away and kill you very easily. And I believe people who like medieval books will enjoy this book very much. So thank you for listening to my review of Joe Dever's book, and I hope that this review will encourage you to read the book, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.